In today's show, we're talking NBA draft prospects. Of course we are. And included in those draft prospects today, we're going to be talking about Paolo Banchero. Michael Bolton?
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_Beeble and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline is where the game starts. Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. Of course, we are free and available on all platforms. Talking draft prospects, we've got two more draft prospect shows to go today, where we're going to be talking with Alex, who you might know as Draft Film School, that's his name. We're going to be talking Paolo, we're going to be talking Max Christie, Dereon Seabron, and Kennedy Chandler. And then tomorrow, fingers crossed, assuming everything goes to plan, Rafael Barlow will be back to cover the remaining prospects, including AJ Griffin, Nikola Jovic, and Jeremy Sohan. So that is the schedule, then a couple of mock drafts to round it up, and then the NBA draft, which at this point, I'm probably going to be doing a live show for the NBA draft. Stay tuned for more details on that once I figure out exactly what I'm doing, but warning.
Let's get it on, Gilly.
So here he is. First time on the show. You might have seen him on Twitter. His handle, Draft Film School. Alex, welcome to the show. Can you hear me? Alex, you put the headphones in and it stopped working. Let's fix that up. Take two. Alex, now can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Perfect. We're good. We're ready to go. We're rolling, and we are here to talk about the NBA draft. Again, as I said, you might have seen Alex on Twitter at Draft Film School. We're going to use his draft knowledge to break down a bunch of prospects. And the way that we've done it on all of these shows is I come in and I ask the people who are coming on the show to discuss draft guys with me is, who's a player that they are higher on than the general consensus? And Alex, your answer was Paolo Banchero. We haven't spoken about Banchero yet, so we're leaving him to the end here. He's 19 years of age. I don't know why that sounded so weird. 19 years old, 6'10" forward from Duke, who is widely considered one of the best offensive players, offensive big men in this class, if not the best player in general. Really high-level passing, but seems to be just slotted in at number 3. Would you take him at 1? Is that how high you're going?
Yeah, absolutely. He's my number 1 player in this class. You mentioned the passing. He's probably the best passer out of the lottery prospects in this class. He's probably number 1. And when you can get a guy being a solid passer at 6'10", 250 pounds, and that's not even his best skill set. His best skill set is scoring. So for me, he's the number 1 option in this class. I think he has, number 1 potential scoring upside on a good team. So for me, those attributes kind of jump him above Jabari Smith and Chet Holmgren in this class.
Yeah, not to spoil too much for when I do mock draft later in the week, but he's jumped up to at least number 2 for me. And I've got him in that top 2, him and Chet pretty close, and I could see it going either way. I am falling a little bit out with Jabari at this point. 28% usage at Duke. And I think a lot of people look at it and go, I'm not sure, 34% shooting. Where's the defense? Can he protect the rim? Does he have to play exclusively at the 4? Is this an offensive-only big man? Where does he fit with that? Let's talk about the shooting, because he hit 34% on a 25% three-point attempt rate, which is not a bad number. And I would expect, given some of his other shooting touch, that he will be able to become a better NBA three-point shooter than that 34% at Duke may have indicated to us.
Yeah, I think he's definitely a better shooter than the numbers lie. You mentioned 34% from 3, which is still not a bad number. And when you take into account the type of attempts he was taking, pretty difficult shots, a lot off of the dribble. For me, when I went back on the tape and looked, a lot of his misses came off of shots that he really hesitated before taking the shot. I think he does need to iron out just consistency, getting into his shot better, footwork, things like that. But from a touch standpoint, you mentioned it. I think he has all the numbers that, you can project him to be a decent enough shooter. And again, you go back to his size and strength combination. You look at him in the mid-range, he's probably one of the best mid-range creator shooters in the class at his size. That's just another aspect of his game that I think will help translate to the next level. And then expanding that out to the three-point line, I don't really see him ever being kind of a sharpshooter like Jabari Smith probably will be. But him just being like a league average three-point shooter, I think is really all you really need from a guy who's probably projected to be kind of a three-level scorer. So maybe the three from long distance might be the weakest part of his offensive game, but I don't think it's going to be an overall negative part of his game.
I don't think, and you correct me if I'm wrong with this, I don't think he needs to be a sharpshooter three-point guy. Like, it's not like he's going to be utilized in the way that Ryan Anderson was, where it's like, get out there and bang in threes. And maybe, to be honest, the way that Jabari Smith is used. The common player comparison for Banchero seems to be Detroit Pistons era Blake Griffin, a guy that, I was talking to this with my son the other day. It's about Blake Griffin, how he just evolved his game every year and became a three-point shooter and then became a ball handler and a passer and like a pseudo point guard. But Banchero's coming in with a lot of those skills already, with that ability to hit some threes, can improve there, but to handle the ball as well. So being a guy where you can just put the ball in his hands and let him be not the offense, but a big part of the offense, means he doesn't have to be that level of sharp shooting three-point shooter, in my opinion, because he's going to be able to orchestrate a bunch of stuff rather than a guy who's going to be just doing pick and pops and spot ups in the corner as a big man, which maybe is what leads or Jabari Smith's career pushes towards. I see them as very different players, and I think the lack of elite three-point shooting is not going to hurt Banchero that much.
Yeah, no, I'm in full agreement. I think he brings enough offensively in terms of scoring and playmaking that the shooting, it kind of is what it is. And then if he turns out to be a good shooter, then that's just an added bonus. And then if he kind of flattens out in a low 30% from three, then he brings enough in the mid-range, getting to the rim, finishing, and then the playmaking again. I think he's definitely going to be a positive offensively overall.
Last thing with Banchero is defense. We talk about 6'10" guy that maybe would have to play small ball center at times, but the block rate's really low. The steal rate's okay, but it's not great. Defensively, is he disastrous or is he okay? Or is it, again, just like a Blake Griffin comparison where he's not the best defender, he's probably below average, but the offense just really sort of wipes out a lot of those concerns?
Yeah, I think he's definitely a worse athlete than Blake, so he'll definitely have to try a lot harder on defense, I think, to be impactful. I don't think he's a disaster, though. There definitely were disastrous moments at Duke, and primarily it kind of came from the lack of effort and trying and just being consistent. I think he has shown flashes of, weak side rim protection, staying in front of guys on the perimeter, but they're a little too far, few in between. I do think he's a really good communicator. You watch the games and he's pointing out guys, pointing teammates where to go. Seems to always know, in terms of a team defensive scheme, like where people need to be. So overall, he might not ever be kind of a lockdown defender or even a positive defender. But again, 6'10", strong frame. You think at least he'll be able to hold his own in the post and down low. So for me, he brings enough offensively. You mentioned Blake Griffin, kind of the similar archetype where they're, hyper efficient offensive players and then just maybe neutral defenders, and that's really all you need from them because they're bringing so much usage on the offensive end. And I think Paolo Banchero is kind of going to bring that to the NBA as well when he gets there.
It's going to be really exciting to see what he's able to do once he does get drafted, looking like, again, at number 3. But yeah, like you, I'm pushing him a little bit higher there. We'll get back to some other players in just a sec, but I'm going to tell you guys about Truebill. Plenty of times we sign up for subscriptions and we forget about them, and free trials, and we forget. And then the companies continue to charge us because it's a scam. These greedy corporations, they're trying to take your money. Truebill is the new app that helps you identify and stop paying for those subscriptions that you don't need, that you don't want, or the ones that you simply forgot about. And you can save, like people do on average, up to $720 per year with Truebill. And because those subscriptions are hard to cancel, Truebill just slides right in there and goes, we'll make it easy. Very, very easy. Just one click, link them all together, and they will sort that all out for you. So don't fall for those subscription scams anymore. Start canceling today at truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. Go right now. That's truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. It could save you thousands a year. Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. Don't forget also to check out the Locked On Ultimate NBA Mock Draft. Just search Ultimate Mock Draft in your podcast feed, and you will find that, where we've got picks going right across for the next 4 or 5 days. There was one released last week and a couple more coming this week. Now, Alex, let's talk about a player that you're a little bit lower on. We actually had someone on the show last week have the same opinion, and that was Chuck from Chucking Darts, talking about how he is lower on consensus with Ochai Agbaji, the 22-year-old 6'6" guard from Kansas. I am also lower on Agbaji. I know a lot of people are really high. They love his intangibles. They love his progress over the many, many years he spent in college and the improvements that he showed. I think that's fine, but I'm just not massive on people who think, hey, maybe a lottery pick, steady production. I'm not. Maybe I have a level of ageism in my selections. I'm just not that interested in picking a senior who really only started to put up these big numbers when he was an upperclassman.
Yeah, and I'm in a similar boat. I don't have him too far down, maybe like in the early 20s, 21, 22. So it's not like I'm super out on Agbaji as a prospect. I think he's going to be a long-term, role player in the NBA. You look at his archetype, 6'6" shooting guard. He's a really good athlete, good defender, really great shooter, off movement, off ball, catch and shoot. My worry with him, he doesn't do a lot on ball. The ball handling isn't the best for a guard position. So is he going to be able to play make for others? Is he going to be able to drive, get all the way to the basket at the NBA level? I'm not sure. But I think, 3-and-D is an archetype that's thrown around the NBA all the time. I think he'll fit into that mold. It's all about just value. Where do you value a guy like that at 22 years old coming into the NBA? I think if there's a contending team drafting higher in the class, then they might, go for a guy like Agbaji, kind of plug and play. You look at even Cleveland at 14. I think he's a good fit on their roster. And maybe, if they take him at 14, I would totally understand it. I would probably take a higher upswing guy. You still have a young team in Cleveland. Is it worth kind of taking a 22-year-old prospect who doesn't, he might have upside that we just don't see. But for me, that's why I'm just higher on other guys, younger guys who might be more versatile and, offer different skill sets that Agbaji might not have.
When I was talking to Chuck about him last week, we were talking about being a high-level three-point shooter. And he shot 41% last season at Kansas, but only 74 from the line. And we were talking about him, maybe to be an elite three-point shooter. Joe Harris, Duncan Robertson in the past. These guys, you've got to be Seth Curry, 44, 45% at the NBA level. And Agbaji might be solid, but that might be 37%. It might be 38%. And if you don't have another string to your bow necessarily, like that level of shooting, it can be found in other guys who handle the ball or run pick and roll or are younger with an extra 3-4 years development there behind them. So what do you view with his three-point shooting? Can it be this elite level spot-up guy that's going to be 44, 45%, or is it going to be a guy who's sitting down at that lower level where that makes it a little bit harder to find that value?
Yeah, I think he's probably going to end up somewhere in maybe the high 30s, maybe 40, 41%. But again, it's all about kind of versatility of your shooting nowadays, right? Are you going to be running around a crazy amount of screens like Steph Curry and knocking them down like that? Or are you just going to stand in the corner and knock down, catch and shoot threes? They all count for 3 points, right? But they don't all, bring the same value to an offense and ball movement. So it's more versatility for me. Can he do a little bit more off the dribble? Can he do a little more coming off screens versus just catch and shoot? Time will tell. I do think he's probably more, closer to a good shooter than a great shooter. And that's another hang up where, if the numbers dip down a little bit, like you mentioned, to, mid 30s, high 30s, is he as valuable than if he continues on like the 42% trajectory? And with him, you're kind of banking on the higher numbers if you're drafting him higher in this draft. And with me, I'm not ready to buy in fully because I don't know if he brings enough upside to really warrant taking him that high if the shooting numbers kind of dip. Because again, defensively, he's good. He's not locked down great all of the time. And for a guy who's going to be in that 3-and-D mold, I think you really need both to be not elite, but like great level to be able to, go in the top 10, top 14 of a draft class.
Yeah, that's basically the way that I feel about it. And it's the way I've felt about him basically since the start of this process. It's like, it's fine. He could be a solid role player, but is there any growth to do more than that? And I'm not sure that it's there. We're going to talk about a few more players in just a sec, but now I'm going to tell you guys about BetOnline, your number one source for all of your betting needs and sports info. You can find all of the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including the Stanley Cup playoffs, which, of course, at the moment, it's 2-0 to the Avalanche, and Major League Baseball, as well as esports, MMA, fighting, boxing, all of that sort of stuff. All of your sports wagering information, including live betting, is over at betonline.net. You can get all of the sports scores, all your podcasts, and news over there as well. And it's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of those favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. I didn't mention golf. Head to the website today, use your mobile device. Learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline is where the game starts. Let's go to another guard. Now, Tennessee, point guard, Kennedy Chandler. There is a dearth of point guards in this draft class. Chandler is a guy where I've gone back and forth in terms of, depending on how you classify Dyson Daniels and Jaden Ivey, who to me are sort of point guards, but sort of not really point guards. Chandler and Ty Washington seem to be that next group of guys on that list. And I've sort of gone back and forth on them in the teens as to where they fit. Chandler is small. He's 20 years of age. He's only 6 foot. But does the lack of those true point guards in this class push him a little bit higher than perhaps he would go in a regularly distributed class in terms of ball handlers?
Yeah, I think in this class, if there's a team, desperate for a point guard, I could see him definitely going in that late teens area. I have him down in like the mid-20s. The size is basically the one thing with him that, it's tough to be a 6-foot point guard in the NBA, just straight up. I mean, you look across the league, there's really Chris Paul, and that's it, at least on the starting caliber level. So with Kennedy, I think he definitely has an uphill battle, but you look at him, the first thing that pops is the speed. I mean, he's a speed demon in transition. Even in the half court, he's able to turn corners around pick and roll, get to the rim. At 6 feet, he has a pretty good finishing craft. So I'm pretty confident with him being able to get downhill pressure on defenses, which open up passing lanes, skip passes, things like that. And he's a pretty decent passer at the point guard position. So with him, the speed is definitely his number one, big trait that I think will translate. And then, it's just size. Does he have enough speed to overcome the size? And defensively, that's another thing where he is a solid defender, at least at the collegiate level. Will that translate to the next level where everyone's a little bigger, everyone's a little more athletic? It's just a big question mark on that side of the ball, just being 6 foot.
He's got a 6'5" wingspan, so a +5 there is solid. And one thing we would talk defensively, like a lot of the advanced stuff from college loves him, like defensive block score plus minus was really huge, and steal rate. Like 2.5 steals per 36 minutes is a really, really big number. And I've talked about on this show a lot is that collegiate steal rate, while it doesn't necessarily translate to NBA steal rate, but it generally translates to NBA success. And that's not going to be for everybody, obviously, but it's always an interesting indicator. So, those are big steal numbers. He averaged over 2.2 steals per game in 31 minutes, and they are big numbers. So, defensively, is it just like you worry about him getting bullied, or can he, the ability to generate turnovers, and are these passing lane steals? Are they on-ball steals, ripping guys as they're trying to dribble? Like, how much of a terror can he be on that end, or is it a little bit overblown?
No, he's definitely got a knack for the ball. He does a little bit of both, jumping passing lanes. He could strip guys on ball too. And then with the speed, again, once he gets the ball, he's gone, and he's running the break. He's finishing on his own or setting up teammates. So I think overall defensively, he'll be able to kind of create havoc and create turnovers. It's just, for me, if he's getting in switching situations, getting bigger guys on him, will he be able to hold up? Maybe. He is strong. He has that long wingspan. It's just so tough for 6 foot guys to just be plus defenders at the next level. They definitely can be, but it's just an uphill battle for guys that size. And I do like Kennedy Chandler as an overall prospect. You mentioned the point guard class kind of being on the weaker side. I have him right next to, Ty Washington, who you mentioned, on my board. So I don't really see too much differential between those two guys in terms of where I slot them. They're different point guards in the way they play, but for me, they're kind of similar value in this draft class.
Let's go on to another guy now whose college production was, I don't know, bad, maybe. I don't know how to best summarize what Max Christie did at Michigan State. He's a 6'6 6'9 wingspan. He averaged 9 points on a true shooting of 49%. He averaged 1.5 assists half a steal. Like, these are all bad numbers. Like, I don't know what I can say that's good about these numbers. He hit 82% from the free throw line. That's pretty good. He's got good size, but is that what we're banking on? Like, because these numbers are really quite bad.
Yeah, there's really no statistical, reason to take Max Christie in the first round. But, it's all hypothetical. It's all, projections for him. He does have good size. He has probably the best looking jumper in the class. It just didn't fall for him at Michigan State for whatever reason. I project him to be a knockdown shooter at the next level, though. I have him, just outside the first round in like the 35-ish range. So I'm willing to bet on a 6'6" wing who I think will be a knockdown shooter. He has some defensive potential here and there. He definitely needs to lock in at that point and get a lot stronger. He's got a pretty skinny frame right now. He's only a freshman, so there's definitely room for growth there. I think he's just what the NBA is looking for if he reaches his max potential, right? He's a 6'6", 6'9" wing who can be a knockdown 3-and-D guy. I think if you get that guy and you get his max potential, then you're looking at a really, really solid starter. It's just all hypothetical at this point with him.
Yeah, that's the thing. Look, he's got age on his side. He's quite young. He's got that good size, but no production. And you compare that with some of these other guys that around that area, like Kendall Brown had some real struggles this season. You've got Christian Brown from Kansas again. That's similar sized, obviously a little bit of an older prospect. These similar sized guys, players with poor production, Patrick Baldwin Jr., Peyton Watson, who are a little bit taller, but there's still that switchy wing size guy that you're looking at and going, well, if it works, it's everything we need. And it just didn't in college for a lot of these guys. So in comparison to, say, Baldwin and Watson, who I think are similar in terms of the complete lack of production in college, but still the measurables and the pedigree associated with them is high. How do you sort of compare those guys? Admittedly, playing slightly different positions, but 2 through 4 interchangeability, wing size guys. How do you view those three together?
Yeah, so I have Patrick Baldwin Jr. a little higher than those two guys. Watson and Christie I have, in the mid-30s. Patrick Baldwin Jr. I still have in the mid-20s. Just because, Patrick Baldwin Jr. is basically kind of a throwaway year at Milwaukee. I'm buying the high school tape and just him being a knockdown shooter at 6'10", and it was just a bad situation that he was in at Milwaukee. So not trying to, dampen his. Obviously, it was a bad year, but not trying to put too much stock into that one bad year. He only played 11 games there, so it's not a huge sample size. Didn't really have any help, so that's why I'm still holding some stock in Patrick Baldwin. And then, Peyton Watson's kind of a different story because he just didn't get the minutes. UCLA was a good team, gunning for the Final Four, gunning for a championship. Didn't really trust an 18-year-old lanky freshman who, was struggled offensively, but really had some solid defensive flashes. He's long, he's athletic. He basically takes up the whole entire court when he's there standing in the paint. So I have Watson a little higher than Christie, but at the end of the day, I think anywhere in between the 25 to 35 range for these guys, they're all pretty close together.
Let's go to a guy who had more production over in college, and he's a little bit older. He's on the old Keegan Murray 22-year-old sophomore diet. That's Dereon Seabron, 6'6" guard, NC State, who measures 6'6", 6'9" wingspan, just turned 22. And you look at some of the numbers, and you go, 17 points, really good, 36 minutes a night, 8 rebounds, that's really good as a shooting guard. But why can't he shoot? 26% shooting from three, never took threes, 10% three-point attempt rate. Got to line a ton, wasn't massively successful there, 71% is not ideal for a guard. So he's sort of a little bit of a weirdo, a high-scoring, high-rebounding guard who can't hit threes and not great at the line. I don't know how all that makes sense in terms of context. Playing on NC State, is it just like he was taking tons of bad shots and had to just drive incessantly because the three-point shot wasn't going in? Is there projectability with that? Like, where does he fit? Because some of those numbers are intriguing. Like the free throw attempt rate is good, the scoring numbers are good, the rebound numbers are good, but does it mean anything for the NBA?
Well, he is by far the best driver in this class with the basketball in his hands. He can get to the rim at will. It doesn't matter how many guys are in front of him. He just finds a way. He's long. He's athletic. He takes really good angles around screens. So for me, he's just a relentless downhill attacker. That's the number one skill that he's going to bring to the NBA and that I think will translate. I think once he gets stronger, that, free throw attempt rate will probably even go up, or it'll actually increase his finishing ability. So that's kind of the bankable skill. And then you mentioned the shooting. Yeah, it's really rough shooting numbers for sure. And I don't know how to project it. He was a decent free throw shooter, 3-point shooter. He had some bad misses. He had some good makes. So it was kind of up and down, just overall really low usage though on that end. So it's tough to project if he will be a good enough shooter where he can use the driving ability to kind of, be able to take advantage of that. But at the end of the day, I think, mid second round, I'm willing to take a guy who, has one bankable NBA skill, and you can just build around that. And I think Dereon Seabron has that with his driving ability.
The free throw shooting is really weird because you look at some games and there's massive numbers. 9 of 11 in the season ender against Clemson. 10 of 12 from the line. A 17 of 29. A 7 of 9. An 8 of 10. Like, these are huge volumes and good conversion. And then there's a 5 of 9. And then there's 2 of 4. And then there's a couple of 7 of 11s. Like, these are bad nights where you're missing almost half of your shots from the line. So getting to the line, no problem. But there's nights where he hits them. So there is, a little bit of hope to hold out that maybe like he can become a guy that gets to the line, hits 78, 79%, and maybe that starts to improve some of the other stuff. But at the moment, it's just wildly inconsistent. And then again, not taking any of those threes, and then the ones that he does take, not hitting them, leads us to have a level of concern. Is he disastrous on defense?
He wasn't good, that's for sure. But NC State ran a all switching scheme. So if he's getting into that scheme in the NBA, it's something he's used to, but he's not the best at. He is pretty skinny still. He's 6'6", good size and everything. But few and far between, he would kind of fall asleep, miss a switch here and there. So he definitely needs to lock in on that end. He has the tools. He has all the tools to become a great defender, or at least serviceable defender. He's going to need some work on that end for sure, but he definitely has, the wingspan and the length. He needs to get stronger though to be able to, really be a positive on defense. But he didn't have a great defensive season at NC State, but I do think there is something in there with him. If you can lock him into a certain system, that he'll be able to be at least a neutral contributor.
We've been talking about guards a lot, and we're going to finish off by talking about another guard, a guy who's considered, I guess, one of the better passers in this class. Now, he is an older player. That's Alondes Williams from Wake Forest. He just turned 23 today? Yeah, today. He turned 23 today. He's a 6'5" shooting guard, point guard. I think he's more of a point guard. He averaged 5 assists per game last season, scored 19 points. But again, shot 28% from 3. He took a fair few of them, just they didn't go in, and he was even worse from the free throw line than what Seabron was, just hitting those at 69%.
Giggity!
But 51% overall from the field. Again, older player, solid passing numbers, good scoring numbers, really high usage. Is this a case of, hey, you are old and you are beating up on younger players, and the usage and all the passing and running a lot of this stuff at Wake Forest is just going to have no translatability to the NBA, because you're never going to be put in this position where you have the ball and you have this level of usage?
Well, that's the thing. Will he be able to showcase that at the next level? I don't know if he'll get the opportunity to. I hope he does. He was really fun to watch at Wake Forest. He is such a powerful guard. He can get to his spots. He can get all the way to the rim. Great finisher around the rim. You mentioned the passing. He's probably overall the best passer in this class. I mentioned Paolo at the front. I think Paolo will get the ability to showcase his passing more than Alondes Williams will at the NBA level. So I don't know if it's all going to translate. If he gets the runway to show what he can do, I think he can do some things at the NBA, because he'll be strong enough. He'll work his butt off. I mean, he'll be able to defend at the next level. I think overall it's going to come down to the shooting. Will an NBA team put him out on the floor, trust him enough to shoot the ball, be their kind of bench, point guard, third guard coming off the bench, whatever it may be? Will they put the ball in his hands? Because he's a guy that needs the ball in his hands, pretty much. I mean, he's not going to give you anything really off ball. He wants to play make. He wants to drive. He wants to shoot. You mentioned he shot a lot. They didn't tend to go in too often. So he can bring a lot to the table, but a lot of that is on ball usage, which is so few and hard to come by and be an actual efficient on-ball player at the NBA level. I just don't know if he'll get the opportunity, especially, being a 23-year-old coming into the league. It's going to be a certain team that really has that need at guard and trusts him enough. And, all it takes is one team, but we'll just see where he lands, I guess.
It feels like one of those guys that, Hooper Twitter is going to love, because he's going to be able to take guys one-on-one, he's going to be able to score, and he's going to be able to get a bucket, but that doesn't make sense for a team construct because you need to put the ball in his hands so much. Similar to a guy, now maybe I'm completely wrong on this comparison, a guy that had some supporters at some point a few years ago, Alonzo Tria, who he could score and he could put up these interesting numbers if you just gave him the ball at every opportunity, but it makes no sense to do that in an NBA team construct. Is that he's a better passer than what, say, someone like Tria was, but is that like a fair description of the troubles that he may have translating to the NBA?
Yeah, no, I think from a situational standpoint, I think that makes sense. He's definitely a better passer, better defender than a guy like Alonzo Tria was. So he can bring other things besides scoring, but again, at the end of the day, he needs the ball in his hands. Grant Riller is another example from a few years ago. Older guy, dominated the collegiate level, playing, probably, guys that, had no business playing against, a guy like Grant Riller at Charleston. He didn't really translate. I think he had some injury, and, unfortunately that ended his, career. I don't know if career, but it just kind of stopped his development. But he's just kind of that older guard bucket getter that Alondes Williams kind of is. And again, it's going to come down to just, will he get the opportunity to have the ball in his hands and showcase what he can do? And it's going to be close. I don't know. Maybe he goes mid-second round, team falls in love with him and gives him the keys to their third, guard spot, or maybe even the second unit. But I think it's going to be tough for him to just find a home long-term. And then given that he's 23 years old, he doesn't have a lot of runway to really, develop and grow with the team, off the rookie scale contract.
Well, Alex, thank you for coming on and discussing what was a large amount of guards. I don't know why I put so many guards onto this show, but that's what we ended up discussing. If you don't follow Alex, go and follow him at Draft Film School. Alex, what have you got cranking out at the moment, articles-wise, No Ceilings, podcast? What have you got going on at the moment that people can go and check out?
Yeah, so I write for No Ceilings NBA, so go follow us on Twitter. We're putting out articles every day. We should have some mock drafts up this week leading up to the draft on Thursday. We also have a live stream draft night, 7 p.m. Eastern time. It's going to be all of us on, going pick by pick, reactions, discussing all of the players that are picked. So it should be a fun time. So make sure to tune into that.
So go and check out all of Alex's work. I said you can find him on Twitter. You can find all the No Ceilings guys. We had a few of those guys on over the last couple of weeks. Alex, thanks for coming on Locked On Fantasy Basketball with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Josh.
And that'll do it for today's show. Don't forget to follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on the Odyssey app. If you're here on YouTube, thumbs up. Leave your comments down below. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.